as a shareholder, Delhi Airport, after 11 years, has declared 6% dividend. So a 6% return on equity after 11 years is what has come to the shareholders. And you can see the kind of benefits which have been there to the economy, to the government, to the airlines, to the passengers, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of facilities, in terms of cash given to the government. And I did mention about the fact that this is one of the most critical issues which has to be addressed as far as that airport space in India is concerned. Leaving aside that, of course, those are some of the blips, but Delhi Airport, of course, with all its, with all the infrastructure investment and the process improvement and the focus on airport operations, it has been a winner of number of awards, ASQ, Skytrax, etc., etc. And you can go to our website and have a look at it. This is very briefly about a case study on Delhi Airport privatization. And if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to take it.
A request, Mr. Arvind Pradhan, Director General, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to please present a memento to Mr. Siddharth Kapoor. Well, due to paucity of time, we will have to really forego the question answer segment. We are running almost an hour late and we really have to catch up. Probably we can take up questions during the break. This session will be followed by a tea coffee break. Please go ahead. Mr. Vasudevan.
Siddharth, I had to bowl a googly at you, having worked with you for so long. So I missed the last part of your presentation, but I guess most people here know the new benchmarks that you set when you first developed Delhi Airport. Now we've seen a lot of bidding happening of late for much larger assets, as you know. And one question which is an overhang for most people here, and this is not only people in the industry who are asking, but mostly governments who are actually giving out these projects, right? I know that you're participating in the Bhogapuram Airport where we're the transaction advisors as well. How do you manage to keep up this passion of running after new assets despite the bad experience that you've had in the past? What keeps driving you?
I think that's a very apt question. And there has been, over a period of time, there has been, I think, acceptance of some of this uncertainty. And we have, I would say, got our mind around this madness of the regulator. And I mean, you have recently seen the consultation paper for Cochin. I think some of the decisions have been completely in divergence to the decisions taken as far as the earlier airports are concerned, like Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Delhi. So
you should thank the advisor there.
But I think the concession agreements of the new airports which are coming up, they are much more clearer. And they have also learned from the mistakes of the past. At the same time, we believe that there will be a redressal of many of these issues. I think so. At least as far as India is concerned, coming from India, I know people looking from outside, they viewed India in a different manner. But when we are within India, we understand that there is a legal framework which is solid but slow. And we do expect that there will be a resolution at some point of time. Like the minister talked about the fact that they are looking at a new regulatory framework. This is after almost 12 years of privatization and 5 years of no decisions at the appellate. But having said that, I firmly believe, and I think as a group we firmly believe that the entire sector itself has got a very strong future, very positive future, and the government is taking a number of positive steps, which is actually visible in the aviation policy. The fact that they have moved from a single till by the regulator to a hybrid till, which was part of the aviation policy, talks a lot about the fact that how the government is actually clued upon ensuring that this sector becomes more vibrant. So I think that's what keeps us going.
Please accept this memento as a token of gratitude. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is almost 11:45 now. As mentioned earlier, we are running really, really late, so it could be a quick 5-minute or maximum, say, 10-minute break. Positively reassemble in the next 15 minutes so that we can begin our next session at 12 sharp and no later. Thank you.
May I suggest, if you're running late?
Yes, sir. We continue. I invite Madam Sharmila Chavli, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Department of Economic Affairs, Government of India. She will be addressing us on sustainable financing of infrastructure. I will briefly introduce her. Madam Sharmila Chavli, Joint Secretary, Infrastructure and Investment Division, Department of Economic Affairs, Government of India, has been appointed as a government nominee director on the Board of Directors of India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited. Ma'am, please be seated. By the Department of Financial Services, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. She is an officer of the Indian Railway Accounts Service. Prior to the present assignment, she has held the post of Executive Director, Railway Board. She also earlier held the position of Director, ADB, with Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance. Ma'am, we are eager to listen to your address on sustainable financing of infrastructure.
Mr. Prem Narayan has given me the unenviable task of addressing an audience, half of which has left for its tea and its coffee. When I was asked to speak about sustainable financing for infrastructure in a summit or a conference which is discussing airports, two things were highlighted to me: that the audience would be both investors and financing people. I am going to pick up on a point that Mr. Kapoor had spoken about in his presentation, the last session, where he spoke about the greed of the government in revenue. And I think the KPMG representative nailed him on that one, because my question is, why do the bidders keep bidding for contracts in the airport sector, given the so-called uncertainty, and what is this greed of the government? The greed of the government, Mr. Kapoor, is because we also have an obligation to fund projects elsewhere where we may not have enough revenues within the government. That is the reason for a very deep amount of discussion that goes into revenue models that are implemented through PPP structures. Not all of these are the models that are going to be taken forward in future, because there has been a learning curve on both sides of the equation, both for the private bidders, who were often very aggressive, and I think this was spoken about by the minister earlier, and by the government in learning how certain sectors respond to certain structures. From the government side, this slide just gives you the flavor of where capital expenditure is going. Even states in the country, and in the end, projects are implemented in the states. States in the country are also now preferring to invest in capital expenditure. In parallel, what the government is doing from the central government side is looking at actions that are taken on the sidelines of the infrastructure financing models to help both ease how financing will come in and also impart a little bit of certainty to investors who are coming in. The harmonized list of infrastructure that has been adopted by the financial sector regulators gives any potential investor a clear idea of where he can access information on which are the sectors which have the infrastructure umbrella designation, A credit enhancement fund will be announced shortly. It was announced in the budget last year. It's being set up. This will help SPVs and project concessionaires in infrastructure buy a slightly higher notching up of their rating to enhance cheaper funds. We have a company, the IIFCL, I'm on the board of that, which allows parties to approach it, including for credit enhancement, partial credit guarantees also. Those of you who are in the infrastructure field know that a new credit rating structure was it was announced by the major credit rating agencies in January this year, which gives you a different parallel rating of infrastructure projects, which helps investors nuance how they're going to rate a project. In parallel to that, some of the credit rating agencies are allowing projects to get a green tag. This green tag can be used in projects which have either in their construction stage, design stage, or the monitoring stage, features of sustainable development, which may attract green financing or which may be in the renewable sector or other green sectors. The project monitoring group that has been set up by the government also has been set up to ensure that bottlenecks are addressed and projects have more certainty on when they get through. But the main focus of my presentation is how are we looking at sustainable finance that we can raise for projects in infrastructure. We have the government capital expenditure investment that happens. I showed that to you on my first slide. But we also realize that that just isn't enough. How are we approaching this? A lot of the speakers in the morning spoke about the very successful PPP model that India has had. The main architect of that PPP structure is sitting here at the table. He was joint secretary when it was rolled out 10 years ago. The PPPs in India are basically in different sectors, including in the social sector. We have over 1,300 projects. Excuse me. Can someone help me with the link on this? We have over 1,300 projects at different stages of implementation. This is supposed to be the largest PPP portfolio in the world. We've had a couple of problems in some cases, but this has been okay because it has also helped us learn where we had gone wrong. The most important thing in PPPs is we have developed a very robust consultation mechanism with our private partners. In 3 sectors, roads, airports, and ports, where we have had very, very successful models rolled out, most of the concessionaires sit across the table from us and then give us ideas. You can access the Kelkar Committee review of PPP, that's on our website, which also gives you the areas which we ourselves in government have identified as those that have to be addressed. There is uncertainty over contracts which are over 30 to 60 years old. How do you address them without in any way creating a moral hazard which questions the pre-bid award conditions? 2, are there any knowledge products that are available within government to improve monitoring? Because very often what happens in the long term is after a project is delivered, within the government there's frequent transfers, institutional mechanisms may be lacking in picking up on where the earlier incumbent left off. So we have knowledge products and toolkits now available with dashboards for any project authority to go and start picking up on what he has to do to monitor the contract. Simultaneously in PPPs, what we have started is, excuse me. On the screen. We have also in this started looking at how we can build up a database which is available for analysis. Dr. Mayram is sitting here. He had asked us to develop a website for 2 things. One is for PPP projects in India, including having an e-repository of concession agreements. 2, can we build up a database on infrastructure projects in India, both government and non-government? This has started. We have an repository now of concession agreements. We have about 69 concession agreements. We are slowly populating that. These are available for anyone to go to the website and start looking at the concession agreements. We welcome suggestions that are given to us on any improvements that can be made in the future. In parallel, what we have done is we have developed the infrastructure debt funds. Infrastructure debt funds were announced in 2012. The regulatory structures were issued by the SEBI and the RBI in 2013. We have 6 infrastructure debt funds now functioning in the country, 3 of them as NBFCs and 3 of them as mutual funds. They have portfolios of over 500 million USD each. One of them is expected to list on the Singapore Stock Exchange within the next month or so. What do these debt funds do? They basically take out debt, the original debt of the investor, and they replace it with longer bond finance debt. These have worked very well in India, and we have seen an active interest because one of the credit rating requirements is these IDFs have to maintain a AAA rating, which means that the portfolio is virtually safe for any potential investor. The other thing that we have done is we have announced something called the InvITs and the REITs. These are the infrastructure investment trusts and the real estate investment trusts. Those of you who have been following this know that last month we had the launch of the first 2 InvITs in India. They were both oversubscribed. One was in the road sector, the other was in the transmission sector in power. What do InvITs do? Just like IDFs, they have been set up basically to allow the takeout of equity. But they also offer one advantage. They allow a project sponsor who's over-invested equity in a shelf of projects to bundle together these projects into a trust, raise long-term funds that replace his money with long funds that are coming in, especially from overseas, because these are investors who have been seeking infrastructure as an asset class in India. They are almost certainly guaranteed returns. There are certain risks that are there because this is a quasi-equity instrument. It is like long-term debt, but it does have inherent equity characteristics. But because the regulatory structure mandates that a certain amount of the exposure should be for completed projects which are giving steady returns, the potential investor is almost certain that he's going to get money back. We also have industrial corridors coming across the country. The main corridors have been shown here. We have about 6 more corridors that have been announced. These corridors are raising money in 3 ways. One is the classic PPPs, where the private partners come in and invest. 2 is government expenditure, where we put in money. 3 is we are allowing partner companies, partner countries to come in and choose where they would like to be locked in to develop their own industrial hubs and industrial cities. There's been very active interest from some of the countries, some which are coming in through the official development assistance, that is through soft loans that they give to India, some coming in with equity partnership. We, in parallel, have the Exim Bank of India working with us to provide opportunities for the overseas companies to come in and set up manufacturing facilities in India as part of the Make in India initiative. The 5th item I want to talk about here is municipal bonds, and this is also relevant to investors in the airport sector. The first listing of municipal bonds under the new scheme is going to happen the day after tomorrow at the Bombay Stock Exchange. This is for Pune city. The book building exercise yesterday was oversubscribed by about 7 times. What we have done in this is we have ensured that municipal corporations look at the possibility of raising sustainable finance for their enormous infrastructure needs. There are 5 basic principles on which these municipal bonds are based. One is very robust disclosures, financial disclosures. 2 is balance sheets. Clean up the balance sheets and do commercial accounting. 3, have a shelf of projects so that potential investors know that they can engage with the city in the long term. 4, have sufficient size of issuance that encourages long-term investors to come in. And 5, which is possibly the kingpin of all this, ensure that there is a very transparent escrow mechanism for servicing of the bonds. We had originally intended this to be only for PPP projects, but now this is opened up for all projects. The Prime Minister had announced that at least 10 cities would have to list their municipal bonds within the next year. After Pune, we expect about 3 other cities to be rolled out in quick succession. And one of the things that we have been asked about is whether airport financing could be part of municipal bonds. One of the things that we have asked for in these issuances is all projects have to be ring-fenced projects. This allows potential investors to know what are the contours of the project, when it is expected to be finished. So yes, airports would certainly be one of the possibilities. And if airports which are designed have the possibility of non-aero revenues also coming in as part of the escrow mechanism, which will be used to finance bonds, I think this would be one of the most lucrative arrangements that could be made. Apart from this, what we are doing in the Ministry of Finance is we are engaging with stakeholders to see what are the key interest areas they have, including stakeholders who come from the investor community. One of the things they have asked us is there a possibility of having a forum where they meet with us regularly, where grievances, including those expressed by project authorities, one of the problems that was mentioned was a long term for resolution of disputes in India, despite us having a very strong judicial system. The Finance Minister has already announced this. We are looking at providing for an arbitration carve-out in the Arbitration Act, where infrastructure projects, including PPPs, could be resolved in a much shorter time with some amount of expert input coming in, because infrastructure is very different from the standard contracts that are implemented in the country. This is still in the design stage. We hope that it will come through, and that will allow a certain amount of certainty about when disputes are resolved. Apart from this, we have the national, just the last one. That's it, thank you. No, that's it. Yeah, the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund that has been set up. This is a fund that was announced by the Finance Minister last year. This fund has evolved into a structure which can become a bespoke receptacle for investment. Any long-term investor with a substantial amount of funds can talk to the NIIF and have a product designed for him to come in and invest based upon his interests. This could be sector-specific, this could be project-specific, this could be structure-specific. It could be an AIF, it could be something where distressed assets come in, it could be greenfield investment, it could be brownfield development, it could be debt, it could be equity, it could be matching equity by the government. So this is a particular product which is open to discussion with the NIIF itself. The CEO has been appointed, and I understand that long-term investors are already in discussion with him. This then is how we are looking at sustainable financing over the next few years. We also recognize that in infrastructure, there's no single silver bullet. As we address a certain set of problems, especially from the financing angle, another set comes up. This is because of developments both in the macro world and project-specific. It is not always that as government, we can find resolutions that perfectly match the aspirations of the private sector. As government, we have a certain responsibility to look at the public good. There are certain decisions that we may take looking at a universe that is larger than just partners in a relationship where a private partner is delivering a contract, but underlying this is the acceptance that the concession agreement, especially in a PPP contract, is sacrosanct. The terms of a concession agreement cannot be broken because that adds to the reputational risk of the country. What instead we are trying to do is to address the uncertainties, the unknown unknowns over 30 to 60-year contracts, is see whether we can build in triggers that will allow renegotiation over the long term without affecting any of the original project financials. And that, I think, has been done in two areas. You will expect to see the rollout of the model concession agreements in the next couple of years. This is in the road sector, in the port sector. Because of the different models that were followed in the revenue structures for the airports, we still haven't been able to identify such triggers. Maybe it's premature to do it at this stage. The other sectors haven't had an experience large enough to warrant this, but if that happens, we will be doing it. We are also, in parallel, from the Ministry of Finance, rolling out PPP structures in the social sector now, that is in health, in education, and in rural infrastructure. We expect to see that being picked up with great success. We have PPP models in water and sanitation. We have city municipalities in the hill states coming together for pool financing of infrastructure. So while we from the government are trying to increase the capital expenditure that we can do, we are also trying to leverage that to attract sustainable financing investment from outside the government. And that, in a nutshell, is what we do in the government, in the Ministry of Finance. Thank you.
Mr. Prem Narayan has a question for you, ma'am. Mic, please.
Until that comes, Ms. Chowdhury, whenever one hears you, I must say it's a fountain of ideas that keep coming up. But tell me on this municipal bonds, it's an absolutely revelation and it's a fantastic development. Congratulations, wish you all the best. Bottom line, who will decide the investment? Will there be an investment committee?
You mean the size of the issuance or?
No, not the issuance. Once the money comes in that case, the allocation.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's why I said that the investment has to be project specific. If you are investing a particular bond, it is going to be for a particular project or a shelf of projects that are pre-announced. For instance, the Pune listing that's happening the day after is for 2,000 crore plus, the numbers will come out in the papers, water supply project. So it is project specific, which an investor, I think, requires to know. It shouldn't be fungible money that goes anywhere. That is very clear.
Request Mr. Prem Narayan to please present a memento to Madam Chowdhury. Sharmila ma'am, please accept this as a token of appreciation. Thank you so much.